Now, our top story today. US President Donald Trump says his meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska could have severe consequences if no progress is made. He will set tariffs on steel and chips next week, but rates will start lower. Trump says Putin is interested in the US economy and that any business will have to wait until the war stops. He believes ongoing attacks in Ukraine hurt Putin's position, despite Moscow thinking otherwise. Trump says something will come from the talks and security guarantees are possible with Europe. Let's have a look at what Trump said.
He's a smart guy, been doing it for a long time, but so have I. Been doing it for a long time. And here we are, we're president. That was much more difficult than what I'm doing today, believe me. So we get along. There's a good respect level on both sides. And I think, something's going to come of it. I noticed he's bringing a lot of business people from Russia. And that's good. I like that because they want to do business, but they're not doing business until we get the war settled. I think they're trying to negotiate. He's trying to set a stage. I mean, in his mind, that helps him make a better deal. It actually hurts him. But in his mind, that helps him make a better deal if they can continue the killing. Maybe it's a part of the world. Maybe it's just his fabric, his genes, his genetics. But he thinks that makes him, gives him strength in negotiating. I think it hurts him, but I'll be talking to him about it later. They'll be discussed, but I've got to let Ukraine make that decision. And I think they'll make a proper decision. But I'm not here to negotiate for Ukraine. I'm here to get them at a table. And I think you have two sides. Look, Vladimir Putin wanted to take all of Ukraine. If I wasn't president, he would right now be taking all of Ukraine. But he's not going to.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says his country is counting on US support. He calls the summit a vital step towards just peace and urges a substantive three-way discussion with the United States and Russia. Zelensky says it is time to end the war, warning any settlement that leaves Ukrainian territory under Russian control is not to happen. Talks are set to be the most significant since the war began. We're now joined by our guest, Dmitry Simes Jr. He's the head of Sputnik, and he joins us live from Moscow. Thank you very much for joining us, Dmitry. I first of all wanted to get your reaction to Donald Trump stating that he won't do business with Russia, with Moscow, until this war is over. Now, Russia has been isolated economically from the West since this war began. What is the current economic situation in Russia, and how badly, or if at all, do they need to stop this isolation?
Well, one small correction. I'm not head of Sputnik. I'm head of Sputnik India and Sputnik International. But to answer your question, regarding the economic situation, back in 2022, Biden promised to break the Russian economy with sanctions. We had numerous Western leaders, politicians, economists predict the total collapse of the Russian economy. That didn't happen. In fact, the opposite happened. Russia outgrew the entire G7, in 2023, in 2024. So 2 years in a row, Russia outgrew the entire G7. Russia also saw wages increase. Russia saw, the resurrection of its industrial base. So if we are to look at the big picture, the Russian economy is stronger and more self-reliant now in 2025 than it was before the conflict started. Now, that isn't to say that there haven't been difficulties along the way. Obviously, interest rates in Russia are quite high. And, that creates some difficulties for businesses who want to take out credit. That may create some challenges for young people who want to buy their first apartment or their first home. But overall, I would say that the consequences of Western sanctions have been very manageable, in large part because the West is no longer the economic heavyweight that it was in the 1990s and the 2000s, or even the 2010s. Russia quite successfully reoriented its trade, its, gained investment from Asian heavyweights like China, like India, major countries in West Asia like the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia. And of course, it became more self-reliant. A lot of products, a lot of brands that came from the West have been replaced by Russian alternatives.
Dmitry, sorry, apologies to interrupt there. Of course, the official figures do say something different, that in Q2 of 2025, growth has tumbled 1.1%, down from 4.0% the previous year. People are saying that these sanctions are Donald Trump's leverage for peace, along with the tariffs. One example, he put an extra 25% tariff on India for buying Russian oil, one of Russia's main exports. Is this not, are these economic sanctions not leverage for Donald Trump going into these talks?
So, regarding the official figures, right, if you compare 4% growth to 1.5% growth, that's still
1.1,
growth, right? Yeah, 1.1, apologies. That's still growth. And if you compare it, for example, to Germany's economic growth, the United Kingdom's economic growth, the Russian economy, which is the most sanctioned economy in the world, is performing better than the supposedly members of the developed world. But I would also say that if to those who believe that the Russian economy is somehow suffocating, I would merely say go travel around Russia. You can go to shopping malls, you can go to business conferences, and you can see that the economic activity is very vibrant. Obviously, every single quarter there comes certain challenges, certain adjustments. You can get an uptick in forecast, a downgrade in forecast. But overall, I think the Russian economy has clearly proven that it's quite resilient. Regarding the threat of the new sanctions, right? The U.S. assumption was that it could pressure India.
Dmitry, I'm very, very sorry to interrupt you once again. We are on a time constraint here. I wanted to move now on to territorial concessions, possible territorial concessions. Obviously, there was a huge worry from the Ukrainian camp that Donald Trump would agree to Ukraine giving up its territory without it being present at these talks in Alaska. However, Donald Trump has now come out with some statements and said that Ukraine does need to be there. What are your expectations from these talks, if there are going to be any, when it comes to territory? And do you think it's essential that Ukraine is at these talks in order to discuss this?
I mean, I think Russia's conditions for ending this conflict have been very clear since June 2024, when Putin laid out, the basics, which meant, first of all, a halt to NATO expansion, a point that Trump conceded on earlier today. And secondly of all, recognition of political, military, and legal reality, which is that when we talk about Donetsk, Lugansk, Zaporozhye, and Kherson, and of course Crimea, which reunified with Russia in 2014, these are all territories which voted to rejoin Russia. These are territories who have been liberated with Russian soldiers giving their life and health to free. And accordingly, these are now parts of Russia. They have historically been parts of Russia, and now they have returned home. And so there can be no compromise on this. The Russian Constitution makes it very clear that no Russian government has the right to give up territory that is, legally part of Russia. And as for Ukraine, again, President Putin said that he doesn't exclude the possibility of a future meeting with Zelensky and other Ukrainian officials. But again, I think everyone in Russia understands that the center of decision-making in Ukraine is not in Kiev, it's in Washington, D.C. And the reason we're meeting with Trump is because Trump is the ultimate decision maker when it comes to what Ukraine does. Because without U.S. military support, without U.S. financial support, there's nothing the Ukrainians can do.
Okay, Dmitry Simes, thank you very much. Pleasure talking to you on the program, head of Sputnik India. Thank you very much for joining us. We now move over to the Indo-Pacific waters, where